This ebook is brought to you by Agenvard 1998. Abnormal development. Adler believed that people are what they make of themselves. The creative power endows humans, within certain limits, with the freedom to be either psychologically healthy or unhealthy and to follow either a useful or useless style of life. General description. According to Adler, the one factor underlying all types of maladjustments is underdeveloped social interest. Besides lacking social interest, neurotics tend to 1. Set their goals too high, 2. Live in their own private world, and 3. Have a rigid and dogmatic style of life. These three characteristics follow inevitably from a lack of social interest. In short, people become failures in life because they are over-concerned with themselves and care little about others. Maladjusted people set extravagant goals as an overcompensation for exaggerated feelings of inferiority. These lofty goals lead to dogmatic behavior, and the higher the goal, the more rigid the striving. To compensate for deeply rooted feelings of inadequacy and basic insecurity, these individuals narrow their perspective and strive compulsively and rigidly for unrealistic goals. The exaggerated and unrealistic nature of neurotics' goals sets them apart from the community of other people. They approach the problems of friendship, sex, and occupation from a personal angle that precludes successful solutions. Their view of the world is not in focus with that of other individuals, and they possess what Adler called private meaning. These people find everyday living to be hard work, requiring great effort. Adler used an analogy to describe how these people go through life. In a certain popular music hall, the strong man comes on and lifts an enormous weight with care and intense difficulty. Then, during the hearty applause of the audience, a child comes in and gives away the fraud by carrying the dummy weight off with one hand. There are plenty of neurotics who swindle us with such weights, and who are adepts at appearing overburdened. They could really dance with the load under which they stagger. External factors in maladjustment. Why do some people create maladjustments? Adler recognized three contributing factors, any one of which is sufficient to contribute to abnormality: 1. Exaggerated physical deficiencies, 2. A pampered style of life, and 3. A neglected style of life. Exaggerated physical deficiencies. Exaggerated physical deficiencies, whether congenital or the result of injury or disease, are not sufficient to lead to maladjustment. They must be accompanied by accentuated feelings of inferiority. These subjective feelings may be greatly encouraged by a defective body. But they are the progeny of the creative power. Each person comes into the world blessed with physical deficiencies, and these deficiencies lead to feelings of inferiority. People with exaggerated physical deficiencies sometimes develop exaggerated feelings of inferiority because they overcompensate for their inadequacy. They tend to be overly concerned with themselves and lack consideration for others. They feel as if they are living in enemy country, fear defeat more than they desire success, and are convinced that life's major problems can be solved only in a selfish manner. Pampered style of life. A pampered style of life lies at the heart of most neuroses. Pampered people have weak social interest but a strong desire to perpetuate the pampered, parasitic relationship they originally had with one or both of their parents. They expect others to look after them, overprotect them, and satisfy their needs. They are characterized by extreme discouragement, indecisiveness, oversensitivity, impatience, and exaggerated emotion, especially anxiety. They see the world with private vision and believe that they are entitled to be first in everything. Pampered children have not received too much love, rather they feel unloved. Their parents have demonstrated a lack of love by doing too much for them and by treating them as if they were incapable of solving their own problems. Because these children feel pampered and spoiled, they develop a pampered style of life. Pampered children may also feel neglected. Having been protected by a doting parent, they are fearful when separated from that parent. Whenever they must fend for themselves, they feel left out, mistreated, and neglected. These experiences add to the pampered child's stockpile of inferiority feelings. Neglected style of life. The third external factor contributing to maladjustment is neglect. Children who feel unloved and unwanted are likely to borrow heavily from these feelings in creating a neglected style of life. Neglect is a relative concept. No one feels totally neglected or completely unwanted. The fact that a child survived infancy is proof that someone cared for that child and that the seed of social interest has been planted. Abused and mistreated children develop little social interest and tend to create a neglected style of life. They have little confidence in themselves and tend to overestimate difficulties connected with life's major problems. They are distrustful of other people and are unable to cooperate for the common welfare. They see society as enemy country, feel alienated from all other people, and experience a strong sense of envy toward the success of others. Neglected children have many of the characteristics of pampered ones, but generally they are more suspicious and more likely to be dangerous to others. Safeguarding tendencies. Adler believed that people create patterns of behavior to protect their exaggerated sense of self-esteem against public disgrace. These protective devices, called safeguarding tendencies, enable people to hide their inflated self-image and to maintain their current style of life. Adler's concept of safeguarding tendencies can be compared to Freud's concept of defense mechanisms. Basic to both is the idea that symptoms are formed as a protection against anxiety. However, there are important differences between the two concepts. Freudian defense mechanisms operate unconsciously to protect the ego against anxiety, whereas Adlerian safeguarding tendencies are largely conscious and shield a person's fragile self-esteem from public disgrace. Also, Freud's defense mechanisms are common to everyone, but Adler discussed safeguarding tendencies only with reference to the construction of neurotic symptoms. Excuses, aggression, and withdrawal are three common safeguarding tendencies, each designed to protect a person's present style of life and to maintain a fictional, elevated feeling of self-importance. Excuses. The most common of the safeguarding tendencies are excuses, which are typically expressed in the yes, but, or if only format. In the yes, but excuse, people first state what they claim they would like to do, something that sounds good to others, then they follow with an excuse. A woman might say, "Yes, I would like to go to college, but my children demand too much of my attention." An executive explains, "Yes, I agree with your proposal, but company policy will not allow it." The if only statement is the same excuse phrased in a different way. "If only my husband were more supportive, I would have advanced faster in my profession. If only I did not have this physical deficiency, I could compete successfully for a job." These excuses protect a well but artificially inflated sense of self-worth and deceive people into believing that they are more superior than they really are. Aggression. Another common safeguarding tendency is aggression. Adler held that some people use aggression to safeguard their exaggerated superiority complex, that is, to protect their fragile self-esteem. Safeguarding through aggression may take the form of depreciation, accusation, or self-accusation. Depreciation is the tendency to undervalue other people's achievements and to overvalue one's own. This safeguarding tendency is evident in such aggressive behaviors as criticism and gossip. "The only reason Kenneth got the job I applied for is because he is an African American. If you look closely, you'll notice that Jill works hardest at avoiding work." The intention behind each act of depreciation is to belittle another so that the person, by comparison, will be placed in a favorable light. Accusation, the second form of an aggressive safeguarding device, is the tendency to blame others for one's failures and to seek revenge, thereby safeguarding one's own tenuous self-esteem. "I wanted to be an artist, but my parents forced me to go to medical school. Now I have a job that makes me miserable." Adler believed that there is an element of aggressive accusation in all unhealthy lifestyles. Unhealthy people invariably act to cause the people around them to suffer more than they do. The third form of neurotic aggression, self-accusation, is marked by self-torture and guilt. Some people use self-torture, including masochism, depression, and suicide, as means of hurting people who are close to them. Guilt is often aggressive, self-accusatory behavior. I feel distressed because I wasn't nicer to my grandmother while she was still living. Now, it's too late. Self-accusation is the converse of depreciation, although both are aimed toward gaining personal superiority. With depreciation, people who feel inferior devalue others to make themselves look good. With self-accusation, people devalue themselves in order to inflict suffering on others while protecting their own magnified feelings of self-esteem. Withdrawal. Personality development can be halted when people run away from difficulties. Adler referred to this tendency as withdrawal, or safeguarding through distance. Some people unconsciously escape life's problems by setting up a distance between themselves and those problems. Adler recognized 4 modes of safeguarding through withdrawal: 1. Moving backward, 2. Standing still, 3. Hesitating, and 3. Constructing obstacles. Moving backward is the tendency to safeguard one's fictional goal of superiority by psychologically reverting to a more secure period of life. Moving backward is similar to Freud's concept of regression in that both involve attempts to return to earlier, more comfortable phases of life. Whereas regression takes place unconsciously and protects people against anxiety-filled experiences. Moving backward may sometimes be conscious and is directed at maintaining an inflated goal of superiority. Moving backward is designed to elicit sympathy, the deleterious attitude offered so generously to pampered children. Psychological distance can also be created by standing still. This withdrawal tendency is similar to moving backward, but, in general, it is not as severe. People who stand still simply do not move in any direction, thus, they avoid all responsibility by insuring themselves against any threat of failure. They safeguard their fictional aspirations because they never do anything to prove that they cannot accomplish their goals. A person who never applies to graduate school can never be denied entrance. A child who shies away from other children will not be rejected by them. By doing nothing, people safeguard their self-esteem and protect themselves against failure. Closely related to standing still is hesitating. Some people hesitate or vacillate when faced with difficult problems. Their procrastinations eventually give them the excuse, "It's too late now." Adler believed that most compulsive behaviors are attempts to waste time. Compulsive hand-washing, retracing one's steps, behaving in an obsessive orderly manner, destroying work already begun, and leaving work unfinished are examples of hesitation. Although hesitating may appear to other people to be self-defeating, it allows neurotic individuals to preserve their inflated sense of self-esteem. The least severe of the withdrawal safeguarding tendencies is constructing obstacles. Some people build a straw house to show that they can knock it down. By overcoming the obstacle, they protect their self-esteem and their prestige. If they fail to hurdle the barrier, they can always resort to an excuse. In summary, safeguarding tendencies are found in nearly everyone, but when they become overly rigid, they lead to self-defeating behaviors. Overly sensitive people create safeguarding tendencies to buffer their fear of disgrace, to eliminate their exaggerated inferiority feelings, and to attain self-esteem. However, safeguarding tendencies are self-defeating because their built-in goals of self-interest and personal superiority actually block them from securing authentic feelings of self-esteem. Many people fail to realize that their self-esteem would be better safeguarded if they gave up their self-interest and developed a genuine caring for other people. Masculine protest. In contrast to Freud, Adler believed that the psychic life of women is essentially the same as that of men and that a male-dominated society is not natural but rather an artificial product of historical development. According to Adler, cultural and social practices not anatomy influence many men and women to overemphasize the importance of being manly, a condition he called the masculine protest. Origins of the masculine protest. In many societies, both men and women place an inferior value on being a woman. Boys are frequently taught early that being masculine means being courageous, strong, and dominant. The epitome of success for boys is to win, to be powerful, to be on top. In contrast, girls often learn to be passive and to accept an inferior position in society. Some women fight against their feminine roles, developing a masculine orientation and becoming assertive and competitive. Others revolt by adopting a passive role, becoming exceedingly helpless and obedient. Still others become resigned to the belief that they are inferior human beings, acknowledging men's privileged position by shifting responsibilities to them. Each of these modes of adjustment results from cultural and social influences, not from inherent psychic difference between the two genders.